This type of Yerushalmi Pesachim in the article also additional on Daf Nun Beis Amrav, the third line down, Ilay Tinokas, and in the middle, that's the fifth line from the bottom of Mem Dal on the base. And the Yerushalmi, as it does where elsewhere where the Suya is brought down, compacts and condenses here without any bridging material like you will find in Bavli, several different discussions which took place in different yeshivas or different epics about this issue of the Tinokas Fekas, the Friday Shabbos, Shabbos Sunday Sugya. And the Gemara here is kind of starting out again a little bit from the beginning. So let's see that. And so I didn't take us fakos. These take us fakos, smart avilon. How do you look at them? Kedavar sheyesh look at something which has a limit, or kedavar sheyesh look at something which has no limit. Now let's read the Korban Eidos Girsa here because it makes things work out better. Hakas here in time they kedavar she'ein lo kitzba. If you're gonna make it like kedavar she'ein lo kitzba, I feel ein sham tinok achelamu. Then if bris milah is like kedavar she'ein lo kitzba. Because there's no limit to the amount of bris milas you can do on Shabbos. So there, who knows, it depends on how many kids are born. So I guess there is a theoretical limit, but there could be more kids are born. So we're born this week or whatever. Anyway, it's a double. If we're going to say it's a double sheyesh lo kitzvah, ain't no kitzvah. I feel ain't sham tinok achar lamu. So it doesn't matter if you have another child here or not. If you double sheyesh, because they're going to say which has a quota, who sheyesh sham tinok achar lamu, there's got to be another kid present who needs bris milah. V'chi perusha, that's I just read it. Now let's read his commentary. V'chi perusha kedavar she'ein lo kitzvah. Afilu mal shel Shabbos erev Shabbos. If you mal a kid who's supposed to be on Shabbos erev Shabbos, so there's no longer any dechia in front of you. Potter, because in lo kitzvah there's the other kids in the world who have who need a bris milah today. V'yitamel so kedavar she'yesh lo kitzvah. They're going to say something which has a quota. So then b'ina sheyesh sham tinok achar lamu. You need to have something another child who has to have a bris milah today. Tavli Torah mamish, so that you actually Torah in a true bris milah. But if not, you're a chayiv. Then you would be a chayiv for Chilul Shabbos. Now, again, remember we're going backtracking, so therefore the sugya here, either the next line starts another fragment from a different sugya, or this sugya we just discussed. No, it's got to be a fragment from another sugya. Because the next Gemara doesn't seem to know about Rabbi Yanai, who said previously, yesterday, says that you need to have Shabbos Nitan Lidachos, right? And it seems like what we just said is that, well, yeah, there is this concept in Shabbos Lidachos, which is that, and therefore it depends if Yesh lo kitzvah or Ein lo kitzvah. So now we ask her, but it seems that now we're starting again from scratch. Isach Hamei, come see. He needs mano potter. If you did the one from after Shabbos, on Shabbos, you're potter. If you did the one from Erev Shabbos on Shabbos, you're chayiv. It should be for Punk Fakir. And Yerushalmi here doesn't seem to be discussing the issue of Nidna Shabbos Sidachos, not Nidna Shabbos Sidachos. Seems to without that whole issue which we discussed over the past block. It's asking a very short question on the Mishnah and Shabbos. How can it be that you're potter on the Sunday one, doing it, which we did on Shabbos, and you're chayiv on the Friday one we did on Shabbos? Okay, so not taking into account all the issues of how many children you have, et cetera, Shabbos Sidachos, same day, later, earlier in the day, later in the day, none of that is being taken into account. Just straightforward question on the Mishnah and Masechta Shabbos. It says, Rav Huna Amar Mechafi Masnisa. In other words, the girsa that we, the Yerushalmi, had in the Gemara in Shabbos, in the Mishnah and Shabbos, that's not the proper girsa. And there's another girsa in that Mishnah, which will eliminate your question. Okay, and again, we're not trying to explain the Mishnah and say, no, Nidna Shabbos Sidachos, not Nidna Shabbos Sidachos, just straightforward changing the girsa, making what the Yerushalmi's girsa, taking the Yerushalmi's girsa in that Mishnah and changing the Bavli's girsa. And Rabbi Shimon, I will say more that in Masechta Shabbos I changed the girsa to Rabbi Meir, but I'm not sure exactly why, and I could try and get into it now. This is Rabbi Shimon's version of Mishnah. You're right. If they had bris milah on Sunday and they did it on Shabbos, shuchayev. That's like it's not bar mitzvah because it's premature. Their machlokes is on the other side. Erev Shabbos. The kid was supposed to be mild at Erev Shabbos. The Shabbos, he did the bris milah on Shabbos. because it's not its appropriate day. And Rabbi Yeshua is poked because since it's after 8 days, so therefore it's a mitzvah and it's ta bidvar mitzvah. Now the Gemara brings in again Rabbi Yanai. So Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Bun. Yosef Bun said min kushye makshei Rabbi Yanai from this issue in our Mishnah, the Mishnah over there. That's why that was as difficult. Rabbi Yanai. Let's see, comment on this. See, he says that Mikol Kushizu the Mishnah Seinu, because the question of how can the one from Sunday on Shabbos be part of the one on Friday on Shabbos is chayav. So Mikol Kushizu the Mishnah Seinu who behefech, and the Mishnah should be the opposite. Avanami Kash Rabbi Yanai, which Rabbi Yanai should also difficult. Hilkoch, therefore, Mukim Asis, and that's why Rabbi Yanai said earlier that that you forgot you reminded the Erev Shabbos and Shabbos. The lo nina Shabbos idachos that's slow. Shabbos is not nina idachos. The Gara, I mean, Moshe Achar Shabbos. Shabbos is worse than doing the one on Sunday on Shabbos. The irate is talking about, according to Rabbi Yanai, Shaddai Natino Shizman b'Shabbos Omed Lomu. We still had the one on Shabbos who would still do the Bris Milah. And then we had the machlekes and stuff to be before that the bris milah of the Shabbos maybe after the bris milah of the Shabbos maybe, but the Torah of our mitzvah. So that's the goof of the point. Instead of changing the girsa of the Mishnah in the second Shabbos, so Rihanna had said that we're talking about where there's another child around. Okay, so that was exactly why Rabbi Anna had said what he said. So the Yerushalmi kind of brings it together here at the end. So Gemara says again, the difficulty which we just had, which we changed this. So this is what Rabbi Yanai difficult. V'hu sheshachach umal shel Shabbos erev Shabbos. And he said that the issue is that we need to have the reason why the one erev Shabbos you're chai, if the mother erev Shabbos on Shabbos you're chai, is because you lonely in the Shabbos Idachos, there was no baby around to do it on Shabbos anymore. Okay, V'ada Barachua, Amar Zudi Very Meir of Shimon. All we discuss now is according to the Meir of Shimon, who hold that there has to be some mitzvah involved. Maybe it's a mitzvah because it's already after there's another child. It's because it's already after the Zman, it's after the 8th day. Whatever the case, the same with the karbanos, right, which we had, that has to be that there's still perhaps another tzibur around, which has none of the Korban Pesach, right, et cetera, et cetera. We had all this discussion in the past couple of days. That's all kind of Meir of Shimon who hold that there has to be some sort of other mitzvah around in order to be considered Torah b'Dvar mitzvah. And the bad question is to what extent, what format, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Rabbi Yossi, Afilu davar she'ena bas yasa mitzvah, even if there's ultimately there's no mitzvah around to be performed, just made a mistake. You thought you were doing a mitzvah, but there was no mitzvah around other mitzvahs to do. Since you made a mistake and you thought you were doing a mitzvah, you're putter, independent, regardless of whether there's an actual mitzvah involved in what you did, an actual mitzvah around still to do, doesn't matter. The Torah mitzvah, period. That's all. Okay, so the Gemara says, Pirish, new thing. Pirish, you finished doing the bris milah on Shabbos. And you can only go back for the tzitzin, the flecks of spesh, the specks of flesh that are still impeding the kashrus of the bris milah. As the Korban says, tzitzin, Shuri or the leftover of the foreskin, but tzitzim akvin, and these specks of flesh which are impediment, abasal chof or is the flesh which envelops the majority of the crown of the milah. And if it's just a minority, chof and milah tatzarahim tzitzin she'enemak, and those are specks of flesh which do not impede the bris milah. Okay. So if you're Pirish already on Shabbos, you can't go back and do the tzitzim. Only tzitzim makvin. Don't say because of Hiddur mitzvah, you're gonna be able to go back and complete the milah. Rabbi Yochanan said Diva Rabbi Yosef, according to Rabbi Yosef, I feel Piresh, even he already stopped doing the Basila, Chazer, Apple, Titish, and Makvin, you can still go back and do the Titish, and Makvin, Samila. Wow. So you might ask, how can Rabbi Yosef? Which Rabbi Yosef is this? Where do you see Rabbi Yosef would say such a thing? Ahidit Nina says, well, I'll tell you. It says, Rabbi Yosef, Yom Rishon Shel Chag, the first day of Sukkot, Shechali Yos B'Shabbat, which comes on Shabbos. Shach B'Otzi Yisula B'Rshus Rabim Potter. If you forgot and you took out the lulav and Rshus Rabim, which you're not supposed to do, even the purpose of the mitzvah, you're exempt. Hishotia B'Rshus, because you took it out with permission. And the Sakha Shemila came, Af B'Matzkin. It's true also about it. He took a Sakha Shemila out, which is Rabim, which you're not supposed to do. And he took matzah out on the first, when he had to do this Milah on Shabbos, and matzah on Pesach out into Rshus Rabim. So the Korban Eidah says, Avagav, next word here. It should be, it's a kavan that agba nothing way. Once you picked up your yotze, there's no reason to take it out just rabbin. But to look at mitzvah, you're not doing a mitzvah. Kavan sheish tzat since he's lost, so be other kol yom. Since there's a little bit of mitzvah still left and taking the entire day. Even after you had sick, committed on Yerushalmi, like it was custom on Yerushalmi to take to carry luv the entire day. He'll go pata atzah so gemar mitzvah. So therefore you're exempt on the atzah, which is a gemar mitzvah. So here it's inami. You also say kevin shebechila Torah dvar mitzvah, as it's initially you were involved in the dvar mitzvah. So even though you fulfilled the mitzvah before you took it out, the mitzvah continues. Okay, so it's a continuation of the mitzvah even once you fulfill the mitzvah. And that's why even though it's Shabbos and you should be chayiv, no, the continuation of the mitzvah exempts you from being chayiv on the Chilul Shabbos. Actually, I read that wrong. I apologize. It's a question. The Apasakin is a question. So I'm going to read that again. So there's Rabbi Yossi is that Yom Tov Rishon Shchal B'Shabbos Shchal B'Shabbos says so the Gemara says this Gemara speaking. Apasak Shemil Kain, Matzah Kain. Is true also by Sak Shemil, also by Matzah. Well, it says, well, yes, in Madam Rabbi Yochanan, Div Rabbi Yossi, I feel Pirush Chazar, I feel Tzitzin Shem Maklo Sila, meaning the mitzvah is continuous. Once you start it, even though it's Shabbos, it's continuous. That's why you're Tov Dvar Mitzvah when you're Motzi Lulav, even though you're already Yotzei. So therefore, Hadamra Apasak Shemil Kain, Apim Matzah Kain. This teaches us even by Sak Shemila, even by Matzah, that's the case. It's true, right? So it's obviously a very revolutionary svara, and that's Yochanan is saying. But he's saying yes. Rabbi Yosef, who says Tov Dvar Mitzvah continues even past the time you did the mitzvah, well, that means that the Chilul Shabbos is pushed off because you Tov Dvar Mitzvah. So the Chilul Shabbos is pushed off. Once you start the mitzvah Milah, even after you finish the mitzvah, you can continue and do the Tzim Shem Akros Milah. Now, it's not clear for Rabbi Yossi that you can do it even after you mamish put down your Milah knife and walk away. But if you're still in the same, at least if you're still in the same continuous flow, which started with the Tzitzim Hamakvin, and now instead of the Tzitzim Shem Makvin left, you can continue according to this Gemara and finish the process. Okay, halacha above. Shachta shalach of Shlem Nir. The shechta the Quran Beis said not for people going to eat it. The shachta now pretty much. Korban points out, of course, they're talking about Shabbos. Korban empty much put out. Shachta shalach of Shlem Nir. Shechta on Shabbos, not for the people can eat it. For the Shlem Nir, not for the people subscribing to it. La'arelim, the people who are not gemalt. It's may and people are may chayiv because it's the Shabbos not nitam lichos by the shchita because you shechted inappropriately. And I guess it's to say the tikkun what you said previously is that shim. I don't know if anybody's down here. Shim olu lo yardu. I would say the Korban pretty much be down here, but I guess it's obvious. If you shechted lemulim ulareli, la'ochlav lishlo ochlav lemulim shalom lemulim. The mulim ularelim, the term ulatmein, in other words, part kosher, part puzzle, then you put because then it's a kosher Pesach, so it's not just your part. Actually, it's a Korban Pesach. Shachtim means about mum. he was checking, he found that it was a Baal Mum, so Chayev. You're Chayev Korban, obviously, because you were a Shogeg. Okay, Korban says you're a Shogeg. So you below on a Stabile Bakro. You should have checked it out. Baal Mum is obviously a superficial blemish. So you could have checked it out and found it before you checked it. So the fact you didn't check it, you're Chayev Korban because you should have checked it before. You could check it before you checked it. Something means a treifa b'seisa, but if you checked it, you found treifa internally, so then you putter because you're an onus. So you could know that ahead of time, so therefore you're not chayav korban. Shachtim and know that shemashku b'alam es yodan or shemesu or shidmu, and similarly, if you checked and then afterwards you became aware only afterwards that the b'alim have relinquished their connection to this Korban Pesach, or that they died, and therefore this is Korban Pesach without any bailim, or they became Tameh, and therefore they can't do Korban Pesach, they're potter, they should shechted with because the time you shechted it, you shechted with permission because you thought at that point, because Korban, you were lacking that knowledge, so therefore you're an onus and not a shogeg. Okay, so the Gemara says, that which our Mishnah tells that a Baal Mum is considered to be shogeg, and not an onus. Rabbi Meir, needed to corner Meir, who said, Leslie previously had told us back on Gimeli in the Vilna Nuna in the article that even the Shech and Egel, the same Pesach, according to Meir, your potter. So our mission is telling us, yeah, an Egel, the same Pesach, your potter, but not a Balmum. The Balmum we should have checked out. Okay, a person can make a mistake. Thinking Egel is a good kosher Pesach. Person cannot make a mistake. Thinking Baal Mum is kosher. You should have checked out the Baal Mum ahead of time. Okay, so the Gemara then says, "Asher lezer Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish." Now, Rabbi Shimon Lakish we had back in the article in Dun Amud Beis and in the Vilna on Mem Daled Amud Aleph, and there when we learned that, so we changed the Girsa so the Bible and Yerushalmi come out the same way. And you claim to the that was based on the Mashbiach, and based on the Mashbiach. So therefore, we had there that's so good that Rish Lakish says even aim basi also mitzvah. Right? You go today she put him echosh shchutim echosh in the bela because lochem mizeh bachom mizeh. So we said there that if the other one the one was shchutim, one was the bela, there's no mitzvah, but one was a korban. And one was one was not a korban. So then, even though you had even though you ended up doing there was no mitzvah. You ended up doing no mitzvah whatsoever. Your part goes about 12 mitzvah. We said there about one is shkuta, one is available. You can't say 12 mitzvah. One is korban, one is korban, one is one is available. So then you're in the korban. So Rabbi Shlomo said you're part because of Torah Bar Mitzvah. Therefore, of course, so Rabbi Lezer who says even an ego, you've shech an ego the same Pesach, you're potter, even though it's absolutely no mitzvah involved. Shech an ego the same Pesach. So therefore, one assumes okay, so Shimon Lakish, who says as long as there's one of them could have been a mitzvah, even though the way you did it's absolutely no mitzvah whatsoever. You still consider your parts. Okay, that's asher. Let's go. Shimon Lakish Yesh basi also mitzvah. There is a mitzvah potential to be done, even though you didn't do a mitzvah here. Can I listen? Yesh basi mitzvah. There's a potential mitzvah to be done, even though you didn't end up doing any mitzvah whatsoever. As opposed to Rabbi Yochanan says the only case of Tov Dvar back there. I guess the way Tov Dvar is here is where it was Yivim Tonida, and he was doing a mitzvah Yivim, but you thought she wasn't the Nida, and she wasn't Nida. You pat you on the Nida, but you did a mitzvah in the end. Just a mitzvah with being involved. But according to Rish Lakish, even if you didn't do a mitzvah whatsoever, it's still part time. Okay, the next one, I'm going to change one word. I looked at what I wrote inside my Gemara and the Meforshim, and back last time I learned to not change the word. But if you change the word, it makes it a little bit easier. If you don't change the word, you still have to parse and sentences and use an inflection or tone, which will make it as if you changed the word. So, which of course, often doing Yerushalmi. But, and Yerushalmi is elaborating on the point we just made. That in Tamar, you might say Shani Shu Balmum, that Balmum is different. And our Mishnah is telling us, and you should know, even though Balmum it seems to be a case where I might pot to you from Kol Shabbos, I don't, because you should have checked it. Either Mishai Balmum, Ubalmum, here I'm going to take out the word aim. Okay, it's much easier to take out the word ain. Again, you can leave it in and make it work, but it seems to be a toast and muchach. And that's why our Mishnah will tell you, and even though Darkul is Chalef, nonetheless you're Chayim and Chol Shabbos because you should have checked it out. Ego, and Darkul is Chalef. No, we see correct, but it's not true. That's even ego, which ain't Darkul is Chalef. I'm going to let it do right. May I feel ego? Let's say, going to marry even an ego, you're potter. So the difference is, so you say it's not because of Darkul is Chalef, not Darkul is Chalef, that you're part of your potter, because the ego is not Darkul is Chalef, but rather it's like Rish Lakish, who said because you thought you were doing a mitzvah, and Baal said because you should have checked it out. So it's not the Darkul is Chalef issue; it's a yesh mitzvah, like Rish Lakish said. You thought you were doing a mitzvah, even though it's totally not a mitzvah. But that's enough to pat you, according to in Rabbi Lezer. That's Rabbi Lezer's shita in Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Yossi, no. I'm Rabbi Yossi. Even his Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yochanan. I see. Even you say Rabbi Yossi also Rabbi Yochanan. That there has to be a mitzvah involved. It can still work out. Rabbi Lezer can still work out according to Rabbi Yochanan. How so? The Rabbi Yochanan said, Ba'amum ain't Darkul is Chalef. About mum, it's not possible to think of it as a carbon, right? Ego Darkul is Chalef. Ego, you can't think of it as a carbon. Darkul is Chalef. Right? Why is Balmum different? Because Balmum has only one purpose which can be used for, which is to actually to redeem it, because you have to redeem it and use the money to buy another carbon. But ego can be a carbon, and since an ego can be a carbon, so it's therefore it's like the Yivim Tonida, right? Because since after all, an ego can be which is a not about move, can be about garments. So therefore, it can even Rabbi can work out that the reason it brought it is because an ego Shem Pesach it's about garment. Okay, it's not about garments. It's about Pesach. It's about garments of Shlomin. So therefore, that's why it's not Chilul Shabbos, even Rabbi Yochanan. Now, just to make it a little tiny drop more complicated, is especially true in the Shmuel Kapukaya, back in that sugya over with Rabbi Yochanan Yisrael, because Shmuel Kapukaya said that even if Lamachar Yesh Bas Yosem Mitzvah, in other words, according to Rabbi Yochanan, even if you're not being Mekayim Mitzvah now, but at a different time, you could be Mekayim Mitzvah. So with what you did, so then actually you part to call the Torah mitzvah. So here too, even though this Egel Pesach is not a korban, it's a korban, the right korban. It's a korban any other day of the year. So therefore, it's you say Yesh Bas Yosem Mitzvah. Okay, I don't know if you have to come bring down Shmuel Kapukar here, but I figure we might as well remind people that he existed. Okay, so that's one shot. So, but the Yerushalmi Pesachim brings down from the Chazon Yechezkel, Chatzko Abramsky brings down in the name of his father-in-law, the who brought the name of the Yeshua from Shklov. I'm not sure that is. A beautiful prayer, which is he changed the gear say his at the last word Shekain Nitzucha Lehillel, not Lechalel, Lehillel. And in other words, we don't know that a Korban Pesach that Egel is post Korban Pesach except from the drush of Hillel, which I had previously in the Vilna Daf Mem Amud Aleph, and in the article Daf Mem Vav Ralph, right? It says Kosver Korban Pesach Pesach Shem Chatzon Vakar Kosver Mem Yakvasi Min Yizun Yikoketz Chatzon Pesach Chatzon Vakar L'Chagiga. And the sheet of the Yerushalmi is that somebody is toyin and halacha is also going to be the Tobit Var Mitzvah, and therefore it's here. Somebody made a mistake and thought, oh, Hillel says it, but Pasuk says, yeah, it seems to say that Tzor Bakar be a Pesach, so therefore it's considered to be a Tobit Var Mitzvah. A beautiful shot. So Shkein Yitzchak means because you need Hillel to say that Ego is not a Korban Pesach. A person can be Torah Torah mitzvah otherwise and think that it says in part of it. It's according to Torah itself. It could be, it's going based on ego. That's why it's said to be a Torah Torah mitzvah. The article brings down some shot from the Chazon Yecheskel, and he says that there's a sweetie Yerushalmi which says it. But the Chazon Yecheskel, he disagrees with the Shver. He says that Torah Ba'alacha is not considered to be a Torah Torah mitzvah. It's not like on the Shalig, but evidently there are differences of opinion about that. The Yerushalmi Kabbalah says that it is considered to be a Torah. Okay, but in any event, be that as it may, it's a beautiful shot regardless. And we'll stop here for today because we got to talk about